privilege of the floor. No one here. Thank you. Before we get started, housekeeping for July 5th. Just like to throw it out there. I don't know what people have. I know it's holiday week, and are people available then, or would you want to put it off, the next meeting off a week, or what's everybody's pleasure?
Put it off a week.
Put it off to the 12th? Does that work?
Yeah. Whatever.
No preference.
Anyone else?
Holidays on a Wednesday, it's the worst day of the week.
Yeah, oh, it's terrible.
Right.
Okay, then Peggy, we'll move that meeting to the 12th, the July meeting. We have minutes from the last meeting. Is there any additions and or corrections?
I move the minutes as presented.
I'll second.
All in favor, aye? Opposed?
Abstain.
Carries?
I wasn't here. I wasn't here.
Treasurer's report.
Page 5 of your packet. Pretty much everything's on break even. I mean, this particular financial statement is designed to break even essentially, so we're on target for that on page 5. Both from a revenue standpoint, expenses may be slightly under based on how program expenses come out at the end of the year. Page 6, 7, and 8 are just flow-ups of the 3 main programs, with the last one being kind of a minor amount of money compared to the other 2. Again, at this point, they're on target to break even. If there's money left over, it just goes back to the general fund essentially at the end of the year, as last year there was a little left over.
Very good.
Very little, but it was above 0.
Yes.
Page 9, your balance sheet. Comparing things to prior months, our cash is down about $67,000, but receivables are up about $36,500. Total current assets are down about $39,000. We're about $416,000 lower than where we were at the beginning of the year with our total current assets. Excuse me. Total assets down about $32,000. These are all as compared to the prior month. Our total liabilities are down $34,000, and total capital is down $7,000. Page 10, really a question. I think it's a timing issue. While the IDA went up because it was adjusted for the new amount, which changed from like 42 to 47 per month, plus what 2 got posted. The one that says Jeff County IDA, the balance actually went up.
The balance,
If I'm reading the right one
Yeah.
in my note here. I think it's just, might just be a
It
timing
should-
issue or.
well, it should go up every month because the IDA, the LDC is billing the IDA.
Okay, so this is backwards from the rest of them,
Yeah.
where the balances go down because we're
Yeah.
collecting revenue.
No,
Okay,
this one definitely goes up.
all right,
And this is the one we would write off at the end of the year.
yeah, okay. And then other than that, the rest of them are in line with how those loans are paying themselves off. So with that, that's the report. I would make a motion to accept it as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any questions? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried? Finance Committee.
The Finance Committee met on May 29th to review the proposed budgets for 2018-2019. And Lyle went through that with us. Any comments you want to talk about, Lyle? They've changed?
We start with the local development corporation and we work up our expenses there. Then we put the shortfall in and the administrative services fee from the IDA for the coming year. And this is what we did at this point. And it's up from 546,000 last year to 597 this year. Overall, the total expenses are up just slightly, up and down. We're up a little bit on income in the marketing and ag program because we did receive a 2% increase in the county on those. So we're anticipating another Euro Market grant from National Grid. So we are pretty much flat on the revenue side. Salaries up slightly, as our benefits. Most of those are mandatory benefits, so we can't really control those. And the other expenses are pretty much in line with prior year. They don't really change a great deal. But we're not a big operation. We're a small operation, and it's pretty flat.
So a motion was made at the time to move the proposed budget to the board for final approval. That's where we're standing. We'll do each budget individually then, Dave.
Yeah, we'll do each one as during their, each meeting. That's a motion, Jen?
Yes.
Do we have a second on the motion?
I'll second it.
Do we have any questions with regards to this?
2% increase, did that just apply to the ag portion?
Yes.
So what?
Both.
Just that.
That's reflected on the detail of the ag program on page 19. If you look at the top, we had an actual for the prior year of 136,000. It's up to 138,720 this year.
And we didn't request an increase in the county this year, but were granted a 2% because all of the departments in the county received a 2% increase. And I think that's the 8th year we've not asked for an increase. Although the agency, the organization subsidizes fairly extensively what goes on at the agency level.
And if you look at the bottom of page 10, that gives you an idea of our subsidy from the IDA and the LDC. $49,000, nearly $50,000. And very similar to last year equipment.
Any other?
Show how tough things are in the ag community.
I got a couple pair like that.
Those milk prices will go up eventually.
John's gonna start bringing cheese here for handouts, get us addicted.
Yeah.
On the motion, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, budget carries. Thanks, John and committee. Manufacturing,
Well, first news, that I'm not sure if I had a chance to tell you, we just got yesterday afternoon notice that we received a grant for next year's safety training program of $14,853. So we're continuing that safety training program, which targets largely our manufacturers. And we're doing that on kind of a three-county effort this year to kind of expand the opportunities. And we're sort of lead agency for the 3 counties on that.
Is that still gonna center around OSHA?
Yeah, it's all the ocean related stuff, yep.
Strictly OSHA?
Yeah, yeah, well, yeah, but there's various, there might be an OSHA 10-hour general industry training, but we also have a number of 2-hour, 4-hour type trainings on things from, preventing falls, electrical hazards, hazmat, that kind of stuff, so. And then, we've got a meeting coming up at the end of the month here, with some of our representatives from some of our key manufacturers, as well as, the workplace and JCC and BOCES, looking at a new possible training program that might work with some of our manufacturers, and see if that might be an opportunity for us to do some grant funding with that respect, help advocate some apprenticeships and other type of skill training on the manufacturing side.
any questions for Dave? Thanks, Dave. Marketing, Marshall, what do we have?
Just wanted to touch base on a couple of things. I did on the website, I made a couple of pretty minor changes, actually. Lap the whole thing here, the mouse is over there. To make it a little bit easier to navigate, and it's, again, it's a big deal, but to see in the about, and I put regulatory information right at the top of the screen there. I separated the board schedule, agenda, minutes, the board meeting video links, and then the governance and regulatory. Everything is still here. Like, this all used to be in the same one, and it's a huge convoluted mess. But I did make those changes. We talked about that in the past. So I wanted to mention that one thing there. Dave and I went to the New York Economic Development Council annual meeting, and I did. I have 3 pages of notes here from that. It was a really great meeting. Really enjoyed it. This was focused more like the last year was more workforce. This was kind of projects and positioning yourselves for projects. And so the first, and these are notes from the breakout sessions. The first one was the OCR's consolidated block funding grant. But then, there's one about it was called 60 questions in 60 minutes. So basically, we were just kind of throwing out ideas and things. And I took notes on those, the ones that I thought were interesting, as well as getting shovel ready and the 5 stages of that. That was an interesting presentation, and how, it's always nice to see that the people that we're working with are following the things that are on here. So that's always nice to see, from like a third party. And then a workforce one from Linda Mack, and we've actually had her up here to speak before, and that was great. We did win an award, a marketing award for our YouTube campaign. So again, thank you very much for your support on that, and excited about that. I was a little upset about it though, because it wasn't first place. And if anybody doesn't mind, there's the first place video is really, really outstanding, and it's from Dutchess County IDA. It's a minute and 40 minutes. If nobody minds, I'm just going to kind of throw that up. I thought it was done great, and it's something that I really would like to use. This video tells their story. I'm going to change this here.
My friend's wife has the idea down there.
Every morning starts like this. Peace. Quiet. One foot pounding after the other, drumming out the rhythm of my day. This is my time to think about where I've been and where I'm going. This didn't used to be my home. I was drawn here, attracted by the city's spirit, rich in history and exploding with new opportunities. The people are no different than you'd find in Dumbo or Williamsburg. Go-getters chasing their dreams in the Big Apple. Many days, I'm one of them. But instead of subway bowls, now I gaze at mountains. At the same time, though, the people are different. Happier, healthier, living life to the fullest. Maybe the tastes are more fresh, or the refreshment more exhilarating. Who knows? But you can feel it. The energy of a place just a moment before it becomes cool or trendy. Opportunity all around us. A blank canvas full of untapped possibilities. I'm one of these people too. This is where I'll plant my roots and build my company. And it feels like nothing can stop me. Like me, this city is not defined by skyscrapers. It's defined by strength, togetherness, and the promise of tomorrow. I love New York City, but here I get the best of both amazing worlds. And in this city, anything is possible.
and I don't know if anybody saw the thing in the paper this morning, that Jefferson County, St. Lawrence County, and Lewis County were
That catch.
the only IDAs in the North Country region with positive job growth last year, and that was great. And we had the lowest per job count, so cost. Thank you very much. Anybody have any questions?
Just want to comment on that. And following the world of branding and where you need to be going in the future, that video was all about creating an image.
Yeah.
Very abstract. You know, it wasn't dealing with job
Facts.
growth.
Yep.
It wasn't dealing with new businesses that located here. It was very non-tangible, very touchy-feely.
Yeah.
So as we go there and do that, I find it a little ironic, but it's kind of where things are going.
This is new. This is it.
Yeah, it's like, watch a car commercial today. It has nothing to do with the merits of the value of the car. It's creating a touchy-feely image that draws you to it to go buy a car.
I think we need, yes, we need something like this in our stable, as well as the pieces that, yeah, we can hand out, you know, that lay the facts bare. But, you know, and everybody's, I sold, marketing, you gotta tell your story, and it's time for us to update our story. And so that's what, that's kind of my thoughts, process on that. So,
I saw that as all a quality of life video.
yeah, yep.
It is,
Well, I think
and I think it's interesting, that one is, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, that one is aimed not at investors coming to bring a business, it's aimed at people to come live in Dutchess County. And very specific.
Or not
Back to
work in
what
New
they're
York City
focusing
and
on.
stay in Dutchess County.
Yes.
Is people's experience. It's your experience at work, it's your experience at visit. I mean, this millennial thing is turn things to, how do you create a better experience for people, not a job for them.
As
How
my
do you
daughter,
create a
as my
better
daughter
experience?
says, it's all about the feel good. Her generation all wants to feel good, and she goes, "You never brought me up like that, Dad."
That's one of the things we do have. We do have we have our 4 seasons, and that's one of the things I really want to touch on. We have unbelievable recreation here. If what we have is the feel good, I mean, I didn't have to move home, but boy, I couldn't have been more excited to ski at Dry Hill and fish in Lake Ontario and experience the 4 seasons, and you know, work like hell to try to find a job. But yeah, and so I just think that, you know, something like this, 1.5, 2-minute video telling our story, I think that would be something that we really should consider, and I'll put together and let's talk about it, and if you guys agree, then we'll do it. So.
Do they have a sequel to that coming out?
Part 2, no word. They're probably, you know, keeping that so they can win the award next year. But I'm gonna
You
steal it.
almost gotta have a series where you go to feel good, then you go what we have to keep you here, other than the feel good life.
That's a good point.
In the agency business, we used to call that selling the sizzle, not the steak, which is basically what you're saying. But what's driving this as an undercurrent is the need to improve the workforce, to bring the quality of the workforce at a level where it is used in an attraction of industry. And basically what they're doing is saying, young people will find a great quality of life here, so come locate here. Now we've got a workforce we can offer. So workforce, very big issue.
Critical. Okay, and the notes, they're right up here, if anybody wants to grab them on the way out. Again, the draft notes, just, you know, thoughts and things that I wrote down, so, thank you.
That's kind of a compliment to know that you came in second to that. Good call to show it.
I was, Dave, I was mad at first, and I was like, oh, well, the video's pretty good, so, you know, thank you.
Jay,
Good morning.
good morning.
Quick report, thank you. I apologize for being late, folks. Dealing with a little bit of tragedy. My son's girlfriend's mom is not doing well today. Ran a little bit late, helping him this morning. Anyways, we just wrapped up the Jefferson County Dairy Parade. which you might be asking, why are we involved with running a dairy parade? You just talked about sizzle. That's the sizzle to promote our dairy industry. You know, we have a very significant dairy industry here in Jefferson County, and we had somewhere between 6,000 and 7,000 people attend the dairy parade last Friday. So that's a lot of sizzle for promoting what we do best here in Jefferson County, and that's the dairy industry. Pardon the personal bias there towards agriculture. So that was a good program. We've done it now for, I believe, around 10 years. We took it from a chaotic mess to a very organized event that has been increasing crowds every year. And so it's exciting to see it continue to grow and to be one of the things that showcases our dairy industry here in the county. On other notes, talking about workforce, we're working on workforce development for agriculture. In fact, at 10 o'clock, I am going to meet with folks to talk about employer resource networks. We had a meeting here a month or 2 months ago with these folks that are organizing these employer resource networks. And I see potential opportunity for agriculture to take advantage of these, but there's some work to be done to see how we can fit it all together. So I'm meeting here shortly with those folks to see how that happens. And they say there are some models out there of how we can use these ERNs, as they're called, to benefit agriculture. So we're working on that. Ag Park is moving along, slowly, but it's moving along. We've gotten preliminary word yesterday from the consultant that's doing our feasibility study for meat processing. I can't reveal the results yet, but the results are coming back, and we'll be looking forward to sharing those as soon as we possibly can with everybody. So that's continuing to progress. We've been following some leads on dairy processing. We had one lead came in last week on a potential dairy processing plant. Trying to get some response out of the lead. That's always a challenge, but we're pursuing that. So it has definitely been a busy time, and we're continuing to work on all the things we've been working on, and always some more projects coming along. Any questions, Ron?
The study you mentioned for the Ag Park, is that kind of on
Study
the,
for the meat processing.
yeah, is that on the original schedule? It seems like 3 or 4 meetings ago, you had a study almost done, or am I confusing the studies?
The projected time frame was June. And
Okay.
So.
No, I thought you talked about this 2-3 meetings ago, and you
Well,
had preliminary info or
keep
something.
talking about it
Okay.
because I've been looking forward.
I was just
to
confused on
results.
the,
And the consultants did share some preliminary.
maybe that's what I'm
at the ag
thinking about.
conference.
That's what I'm
It
kind of
was at the
thinking
ag
about,
conference,
yeah. Just, okay.
Yeah,
They
we had.
they still have a lot more work to do.
Well, it was March.
Yeah, I thought that was done back then, that's why I'm
Yeah,
just asking the
no,
question.
no, that
Okay.
was just a
Preliminary,
report.
perfect, understood
So,
now, just my confusion.
Yeah, and so he said, the consultant said yesterday, it'll be probably 2 or 3 more weeks before they have the final product for us. It's taken some twists and turns on them, so it is hopefully coming to completion here. Hopefully by next month's meeting, we'll be able to give you a final report on it. So, yeah, it's exciting, but it's also frustrating. I'm not a very patient person, and all of this takes so much time, so.
Jay, when that study was contracted or commissioned or implemented, it was from a grant. What, the scoping of it, at what point in time did a process take place that said we need to have these things addressed? Or did the study come up with the things that needed to be addressed?
There's 2 different things that occurred. The original proposal from a different project developer talked about a commercial meat processing plant, a USDA processing plant, all of a certain size. They came in with a feasibility study in hand that said this makes sense. So that's what was the catalyst to this whole effort. When that project developer stepped aside and Mike Lundy took the project over, we went through the initial siting effort, trying to use that feasibility study. That siting effort, and I'll say this publicly, luckily got derailed. And it caused us to step back and say, okay, let's reevaluate, does this make sense? So we had some people take some looks at the original feasibility study, and we found flaws in it. So we backed up and said, all right, we need to revisit this. But it's still based on that original model. You know, we were working from that original model, that original size. So that's where everything has been based off of. I do feel that there's going to be a need, not based on what the results of this are gonna be, but there's gonna be a need to evaluate custom USDA processing as well, and the needs for that, and whether we can sustain that. Because that's another thing that we hear about, is that need for a custom processor in the area. You know, we have two in the area. We always hear there's need for more, but then we also hear those folks have open slots certain times of the year that they can't get enough business to fill. So it's trying to address that issue as well, and I think it's gonna need to happen in the future.
So excuse me, Jay, when you talk about custom, you're talking about the guys with 4 or 5 cows,
Right.
grass-fed, instead of hauling them up into St. Lawrence County, they can take them there, which was not in the original plan.
Right, that was not in the original thing. Thank you for clarifying that.
I might also add, part of what has happened here is the plans that we're addressing have become more expansive. If you remember, our original discussion was to determine whether or not a meat processing plant was capable of being sustained here in the area. But during this investigation, which has been going on extensively for a long period of time, we began to develop the philosophy that there was much more in terms of potential for the community than just meat processing. That's where the agricultural park concept has come into play. We believe strongly that value-added agriculture has a bright future for us, and we're in the process of demonstrating that.
It just takes too long.
One more question. On your custom processing, as part of the study's focus to make sure a third custom processor can be sustainable so that we don't run out 2 local businesses with a larger.
The custom processor is not part of the feasibility
Okay,
studies.
so that's just talked about.
That's something that I feel we're gonna need to do in the future.
There will be a
once we-
study for that, to try and demonstrate that the 2 local companies don't disappear and we just replace jobs to a corporation.
Right, yeah.
That's very important.
That's the last thing we would want to have happen.
Okay, I assumed that was the answer, but.
Yeah. I would love to pull one of them into Jefferson County, but they're not in Jefferson County. But yeah, we will be looking at that, or at least I would like to look at that in the future, the need for custom processing. And we've even considered those 2 USDA processors in the larger feasibility study, making sure that if we were to build a big plant, would it impact those 2? We don't believe it would. Everything we learned says it wouldn't, but that is in the plans.
I seem to think in one of your, maybe it was back in March, your custom processing could also look at different species. So it wasn't just beef, it was lamb or whatever, other species that would fit in that custom mold.
Yeah, and the larger plant as well, it has looked at that too. You know, the small livestock lines, because, you know, there's interest from certain farms here in the area in growing those lines. But that the big hangup is processing, USDA processing. So we've looked at that in this larger feasibility study. I don't know, that part I don't have any indication yet what the results are. It'll be interesting to see the final study when it comes out. So, yeah, we still have a lot to look at.
Mr. Chairman, can I also add one additional compliment to Jay? The parade this year was really outstanding. It was a great example of organizational skills. It takes several months to make this happen, and it doesn't happen by accident. It's all by design. But the end result this year was superior, I thought. It was probably one of the best parades I've ever seen. And the 100 people who were around me watching the parade on Washington Street felt the same way. There was cheering, there was excitement, and these folks are not necessarily in the farm community, but rather, folks from the general community who brought their kids and are exposed to agriculture in a far different way. So, for those of you who come in here a week before the parade and watch somebody pulling his hair out, you might understand what we're talking about here. But really nice job, Jay. That was a great parade and couldn't be a better example of agriculture in the community. So nice job.
I'll just add one more thing to that. We all should recognize if it weren't for this agency supporting your department and Jay in it, there would be no dairy parade. There literally would be no dairy parade. For years, it's been here for years and years and years, but it was always a volunteer committee. That committee has grown old. Some of them have passed away, they've retired. It's gotten more complicated. It's a function now that would completely exhaust any voluntary effort. So we're so fortunate to have Jay and some support from the county to professionally devote some administrative staff time to that for a few hours every year or a few days every year to make that happen. And make no bones about it, it is Watertown's best parade.
And let me add one thing to Ed's comments. How involved this agency gets in agricultural business is exampled, in my opinion, by a conversation that was held a couple of weeks ago where a utility company was stringing wire in various parts of Jefferson County, and that wire had taken a much lower elevation across the farm field so that the farmer couldn't get his equipment on the field because he was tangled up in the potential of these wires that were hanging over his field. Well, where did this farmer go to try to get some relief from that? He didn't go to the Public Service Commission or anyone else. He came to Jay and this organization, and Jay marshaled forces and we got some responses. So it's that kind of effort that you don't necessarily see. I don't know how it affects job creation, except it is a very important part of our community.
Thank you, Don. It had cut off farms being able to operate on some of their fields here in the county. And the thing we learned as we delved into this, or dived into it, or fell into it, I'm not sure how to describe it, is that this was a statewide issue, and nobody had been able to make any inroads into contacting that particular utility company and getting them to make the changes. As of this morning, as I sat down, I got an email from the company, and they have examined the issues that we brought to their attention here in Jefferson County, and they have moved the lines up the pole. We are the first county in New York State to achieve that. They are working in the other counties now to fix. I mean, there was a farm in Marcellus that had lines at 8 feet high across a 100-acre field. They could, it was ridiculous. So.
Spectrum. Spectrum.
That would call attention
I
to it,
can't
right?
say that.
I will, they're the only ones stringing miles and miles of it.
What is amazing, there were 3 pieces of equipment in the parade this year that probably were 12 to 14 feet high.
14 and a half.
14 and a half feet high, plus 14, 15 feet wide. I don't know, they took up all of Washington Street when they came down.
But those machines going out over a field, and we hope to attract those, because that's the basis for production and so on, would have torn those wires all out. So, nice job.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jay.
Thank you, folks.
It does raise an issue though, and it may come back to some things here. I have not been impressed. This whole connecting the rural countryside to the internet is impressive. What's happened here in the last 6 months. There are crews on every side road in 4 counties, and it blows me away. My question is, who's bird dogging these people? These construction crews, the people they have put on these crews are literally off the streets, unemployed.
Nobody's doing
The answer was
that.
nobody.
And there's no, I watched it, there's a lot of shoddy construction going on with this not fiber optic, but spectrum line. It is gonna create nightmares for years to come because of their shoddy work that's going on, and nobody's holding them accountable. You see it on the poles, you see it in the ground, you see their installs.
There are federal and state regulations about the height that these wires have to be over the surrounding property. They were paying absolutely no attention to them at all, as an example.
Moving on. Unfinished strategic planning.
I think we have an August date for the strategic planning meeting. I will have read aheads and so forth out as quickly as I can, but in plenty of time for that. No other changes at this point.
Did you hire the brass band yet, or?
I think we've got the RIF camp.
We're at the RIF camp. I mentioned at the last board meeting, we're gonna try to provide directions, but I guarantee you it's going to be a sticky wicket. We're thinking about trying to put some small signs somewhere along the way. Those of you who are aware of what's going on at the border crossing, a lot of construction, and so the RIF camp is difficult to find even if there is no construction going on, but with that construction, it will cause some issues, and so we'll try to do the best we can to get directions, but if you end up in Canada, you've gone too far. I guess is the motto there. So we'll do the best we can.
Don't go over the second bridge.
Yeah, don't, right. It should be a fun time. That's a great place to hold a meeting, and the scenery can't be beat, frankly. It just is beautiful. So, looking forward to it.
We have some housekeeping work to do with regards to cleaning up some, or adding some additional stuff for ABO. And on page 21, we have real property acquisition guidelines. They're pretty straightforward. I don't know if anyone has any questions on them.
Go ahead.
I have a question, and we've talked about this before, and it's the General Municipal Law 892E lays out some steps we have to go through when we, I brought it for the executive session because it's mentioned in one of the cases. But with respect to the acquisition of real property, whether by purchase, condemnation, or otherwise, shall be limited to the corporate limits, and shall take into consideration local zoning planning regulations as well as regional and local comprehensive land use plans. Now, that it was from the creation of the IDA. I don't know if it affects the LDC, that language, but if it does, I know we probably can have stricter guidelines in a policy, but can we have less restrictive guidelines in our policy? If not, I think we should try to mirror.
You can't have, I mean, you can't lessen the statute, okay? I mean, we're governed by the statute and the IDA, not the LDC. The IDA regs don't apply to the LDC. Those
Okay.
statutes don't apply to the LDC.
So when we get to it in the next meeting,
when we get to it in the IDA, if you wanna make
Okay.
it more strict, I mean,
Well,
Yeah.
I think we need to be consistent with authorizing legislation. If that doesn't affect the LDC,
Yeah.
then I guess I'm okay. But as a point, I think any project we support or acquire land to, if we're doing it, we should make sure that it complies with local zoning and master plans. But if it's not required for this one, I guess that's the end of my comments on it.
I have a different question. The, under Article 2, acquisition of all interest, I assume that means loans, pilots, bonds, really any interest. Is that an accurate interpretation?
yeah,
Okay. I kind of figured it was vague for that reason.
So did you draft these, Joe, or were these
No,
kind of
they-
from state guidelines?
these came from, samples we received
Other ideas.
from other IDAs. I reviewed them and, we just tailored them to this county.
Can I ask another question, more of curiosity? What, maybe council could give an example, what would be the exception, except for the benefit of a third party? I've been trying to rack my brain where that would apply. Where it says, except for acquisitions of interest of property where the corporation is involved for the benefit of a third party.
That would apply to pilots, where we take a lease back, okay?
So your previous answer was
Yeah,
wrong to my
yeah,
question then.
Right, I misunderstood your question,
Okay.
but these are intended to be guidelines for when we acquire real estate for the agency's purposes, like
Okay.
at the airport,
Okay.
or, the industrial park. They're not intended to apply when,
So RLF, micro enterprise,
yeah,
pilot
yeah.
bonds are
Right,
the
when we're-
exceptions.
right, when we're giving a mortgage or something like that.
Okay.
These are intended to be, run-of-the-mill acquisitions.
Okay. So basically, if we acquire real
Right.
property, not if we loan monies or
Right.
take a position to
Yeah.
extend credits or whatever
Yeah.
the right words are.
And these are policy guidelines that the ABO wants us to have in place.
And just for the record, by the way, even though these are policy guidelines that we need to put in place, the agency has always followed a very strict path when related to either acquisition or sale of our assets. There's a long history of that. For example, if we are to sell assets with a value of more than $100,000, we have to go through notification and timing to 5 different state organizations or agencies to get their clearance, including the governor's office. And of course, all those things are.
That's fine. I'm not gonna I'll make a point out of it with the IDA, because I disagree with it for the IDA policy. LDC, no problem, we don't extend loans anymore.
So going back to Paul's comment, do we make them the same language if there's, even though it's a different agency? If we're gonna call out the zoning requirements, wouldn't you have it both same wording, verbiage in both of them?
I would be reluctant to suggest we should make it different. I
Right.
think
Yeah,
it
there's
should
no
be-
reason to have them different, they should be
Right,
consistent.
That way, there's no question about how to proceed
Well,
wherever.
I tend to think, I don't have a problem with them being different. My concern is there's a section that created the agency way back when that has specific language on acquisition
Yeah.
of real estate, and it's different, if it's different for the LDC, the IDA probably has an additional step they gotta go through versus the LDC, and do we wanna make more bureaucratic? If this affected the LDC, I think they should be the same, but.
It doesn't apply to the LDC,
So.
because that's governed by different statutes. It's a not-for-profit corporation, so.
So I tend to think I'd be okay with different language under the LDC than the IDA. And the IDA could be as simple as just referencing that all action shall be consistent with 892E and leave it at
Well,
that.
if you just get rid of the exception, it takes care of it, because you're bound by the statute anyway. So my whole thing with the IDA is get rid of the exception, because it seems to counter
So to your question,
It
John,
seems
I
under
have
the
no problem
statute.
with having different language for the LDC because it tends to give us more flexibility,
That's one of the reasons we have the organization, so.
so.
With it, I'd entertain a motion in a second.
I'll move the policy.
Second?
Any further discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, thank you. Extension, consider extension of credit to board members and officers. This one should be an easy one.
I make a motion to accept it as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Thank you. Anything else, Don? Counselor, anything for the LDC?
Nope.
Board members? Anyone have anything else for the LDC?
I just have a comment. I met or saw Dave Vespa from the mall the other night, Tuesday night. I just asked him how the smoothie business was going. He said they had quite a bit of traffic in that thing that we loaned the money to those guys for that mall. So that they've been pretty
Good.
active.
For which business?
Oh, it's the smoothie.
Oh, yeah.
When did
thing
that open?
going in.
Didn't see that.
It was a micro enterprise.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Let's keep our fingers crossed that those businesses succeed.
Yes, for sure.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to.
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? We stand.